I tried to erase my wife in front of 200 guests, but she turned my crime into a movement. I revealed my mistress, restrained my wife, and branded her with a tattoo meant to ruin her. But instead of breaking, she turned the scar into power, and made sure I'd never be free again. Hi, I'm Daniel Hartley, 36, and the night I realized my wife wanted to erase me from existence, I was wearing a tux I couldn't afford and smiling for people who thought they were watching a love story. Let me be clear right away, this isn't a story about a bad marriage or an ugly divorce. This is a story about a public execution that failed. The night was supposed to be perfect. Our 10th wedding anniversary. Big rented ballroom at the Westbrook Country Club in Connecticut. White roses everywhere. Fairy lights. A string quartet that kept playing soft love songs like we were in a damn movie. My wife, Colleen, walked in wearing a champagne-colored dress that made everyone stop and stare, including me. I remember thinking, how did I get so lucky? I had planned everything. Or at least that's what everyone thought. Truth is, I'd been planning something else for months. People always say you can feel when something is wrong. That's bullshit. You don't feel it when you're the one doing the wrong thing. You feel powerful. Untouchable. I felt like a god walking through that room, shaking hands, accepting congratulations, letting people toast 10 years of true love. Colleen laughed at my jokes. Kissed my cheek. Trusted me completely. That was the part one enjoyed most. About an hour in, after dinner plates were cleared and the slideshow of our wedding photos looped again, Italy, the house, the smiles, I stood up and tapped my glass. The room quieted instantly. I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight, I said, smiling the smile I'd perfected over years of closing deals. 10 years. A decade. That's not nothing. I looked at Colleen. She smiled back. Then I said, I have a very special surprise for my wife. Something I've been planning for a long time. And I wanted all of you to witness it. That's when the doors opened. And Valentina walked in. Red dress. 8 months pregnant. Young. Beautiful. The kind of silence that followed wasn't confusion, it was recognition. People knew before they understood. I watched it ripple through the room like electricity. I wrapped my arm around Valentina's waist and felt her lean into me. Everyone, I said calmly, this is Valentina. She's the love of my life. And she's carrying my son. Colleen didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just froze. And that was when I knew I'd timed everything perfectly. Because the doors hadn't just opened for Valentina. They'd opened for the men I hired to make sure my wife didn't leave the room. And while everyone was still too shocked to move, I heard the first, beautiful sound of the night clicking into place. Handcuffs. Vincent grabbed Colleen's wrists and twisted them behind her back like we'd rehearsed. She cried out, but it wasn't fear in her voice yet, it was confusion. That came later. The second man, Douglas, pulled out the weapon. Not a gun, too risky in a crowded room, but something worse in its own way. A black baton, modified with enough voltage to make sure no one stood up and played hero. The room collectively held its breath. Colleen looked around, eyes wide, searching for help. My father-in-law looked like he might stroke out right there in his tuxedo. My mother-in-law was openly weeping. My sister-in-law Noelle stood, knocking over her chair, only to freeze when Douglas raised the weapon in her direction. No one moves, I said, stepping forward. This is a private matter between husband and wife. Now, if you're wondering why I did it, why I didn't just get a divorce, walk away, disappear into a new life with Valentina, it's because that's not how you deal with someone like Colleen. She was the type who made everyone believe she was perfect. She had that face people trusted instantly. The "I bake muffins for the neighbors" type. But underneath it, she was a manipulative, holier-than-thou, self-righteous saint. And everyone bought it. I wanted them to see the real her. I wanted to strip her bare, make her as helpless and humiliated as she made me feel for years. Valentina approached, her heels clicking across the ballroom floor like a countdown. In her hand was the tattoo gun I'd paid for. The needle was sterilized. The ink was fresh. She was trembling, but she nodded when I looked at her. "It's time," I said again. Colleen screamed. Tried to pull away. Begged. It was pitiful. Pathetic. And not a single person moved to stop it. That was the most delicious part. They all just watched. The moment the needle hit her skin, the scream that came out of her was almost inhuman. Valentina was fast, precise. I had her practice on oranges. Then on pigskin. Then on herself. The word was simple. 5 letters. One meaning. Oyer. It was a code between me and Valentina. An old word, Latin, meant to soil or to taint. I wanted that on her face forever. Blood dripped down her cheek onto her pretty little dress. People were crying now. Whispering. Some tried to move, but Douglas waved the baton and everyone stilled again. When Valentina finished, she stepped back and wiped her hands on a cloth. "Let her see," I said. Someone, Vincent, I think, held up the mirror. Colleen looked. And her soul cracked in half. I saw it happen. That exact moment. Her breath caught. Her eyes stopped blinking. Like something inside her just snapped. And that was when the sirens started. Someone had called the cops. Everything after that was a blur, shouting, chaos, people screaming. Vincent ran. Douglas tried to tase someone and got tackled by a security guard. Valentina dropped the tattoo gun and grabbed my arm, eyes wide with panic. But I wasn't panicking. I smiled. Because whatever happened next, whatever came after, I had done it. I had turned Colleen into the spectacle. And the world would never see her the same again. Let me tell you what arrogance sounds like. It sounds like me, sitting in the back of a squad car, hands cuffed behind me, blood on my shirt, and smiling like I'd just won a prize. Because I thought I had. I thought I'd destroyed her. I thought the tattoo, the betrayal, the public spectacle would follow her forever like a scarlet letter no one could unsee. But that's the thing about stories. You don't get to control them once they leave your hands. And Colleen. She didn't break. She got louder. While I was sitting in jail, getting grilled by detectives who couldn't believe the footage they were watching, Colleen was in the hospital, healing. Literally and metaphorically. Her parents were with her. Her sister never left her side. The media tried to swarm, but she stayed silent. Not a single statement. Until the trial. That's when it all flipped. The prosecution had the footage. They had the weapon. They had testimony from every single guest who'd been at the party. And worse, far worse, they had Valentina's death. The stress of the arrest sent her into early labor. She bled out in the ER before she could even be arraigned. The baby didn't make it either. Suddenly, I wasn't a scorned husband. I was a murderer. The courtroom was packed. Colleen walked in every day with her scarred face held high. She didn't wear makeup. Didn't try to hide the raised pink letters across her forehead. She let the jury see what I'd done. Let me burn in it. My lawyer tried everything. Mental health. Emotional distress. Provocation. But the footage killed any sympathy. I looked like what I was, a man who planned a public assault like it was performance art. Like I was a twisted showman and she was the finale. They played the video in full. And I heard it. Her screams. My voice. The moment Valentina whispered, "This will only hurt a lot." Even the jury couldn't watch the whole thing. One woman cried. One man covered his mouth like he was going to throw up. And Colleen. She never blinked. When she took the stand, she didn't cry. She didn't tremble. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "My husband wanted to ruin me." Instead, he revealed who he really was. That was the moment I realized it hadn't worked. None of it. Colleen didn't fall apart. She rose. She used everything I'd done to bury me. She let the scars speak louder than I ever could. The jury deliberated for 3.5 hours. Guilty. On all counts. 45 years. No parole for 30. Vincent got 20. Douglas got 25. Christine, my so-called secret, was arrested 3 months later when a hidden camera captured her voice helping set the trap. But it was Colleen's face that haunted me. That silent fury. That terrible, terrible calm. Because prison is loud. Angry. Violent. But nothing is louder than silence from someone you know you'll never get power over again. And that was when it hit me. I hadn't destroyed her. I'd made her. And I would rot in this cell watching her become more powerful than I ever could have imagined. Let me paint you a picture of hell. It's not fire and brimstone. It's sitting in a 6x8 concrete box with nothing but time and the sound of your own thoughts. It's watching the world move on without you, people healing, living, building lives, while you rot in a jumpsuit that smells like bleach and regret. And Colleen. She was everywhere. After the trial, she vanished for a while. No interviews, no statements. Just silence. Then the Hartley Foundation appeared. I remember the first time I saw it, someone smuggled in a tattered magazine. There was a photo of her, standing outside a sleek new building in Hartford, arms crossed over a tailored blazer, that scar like a badge of war on her forehead. The headline? From victim to vanguard, the woman who turned trauma into power. I wanted to scream. Instead, I gripped the edge of my bunk so hard my knuckles cracked. She was helping survivors now. Domestic violence victims, mostly. Women with nowhere to go. Women like the ones I used to scoff at on the news. Now they had shelters with her name on them. Legal teams. Hotlines. Counselors. All because I thought I could break her. And that wasn't even the worst part. 6 months after my sentencing, the FBI came knocking. Turns out my other mistake, besides underestimating Colleen, was thinking Patricia would stay quiet forever. She didn't. The woman I'd been seeing in Buffalo, the one I had 2 secret kids with. Yeah, she kept receipts. Bank transfers. Wire logs. Photos of safety deposit boxes I didn't even remember using. And when Colleen showed up at her doorstep, Patricia didn't just hand her the truth, she handed her a loaded gun of evidence. Not literally. That would have been faster. This was slower. More painful. It took the FBI 6 months to build the RICO case. They found everything. Money laundering. Real estate fraud. Bribes. Connections to people I never even met face to face but whose money passed through my hands. My original 45-year sentence. They tacked on 60 more. I'd officially never breathe free air again. But oh, it gets better. A year later, I got a letter. Colleen had found my daughter. Not the ones with Patricia, the one. The baby everyone thought had died with Valentina. Grace. She lived. Patricia had adopted her. Raised her in Vermont. The records got mixed up in the chaos of the hospital. By the time anyone realized it, Colleen already knew. Already had lawyers. Already had a plan. She took me back to court. Just to make sure I could never claim a single right to that child. And when the ruling was read, I knew, without her ever needing to say it, that this was the final nail. She wasn't just surviving me. She was erasing me. Systematically. Thoroughly. Brilliantly. And I sat here. Watching. Helpless. In awe. In rage. In the hell of a man who thought he was God, and wound up just another rotting story in her shadow. There's a kind of madness that sets in when you realize you've lost everything, and you're the one who handed it all away. You start replaying every decision like it's a football game you could have won if only you'd passed instead of run. But in my case, I'd lit the whole stadium on fire, then asked why I wasn't getting a trophy. I'd been in prison for nearly 5 years when I heard about Daniel. Of course his name was Daniel. Professors always are. History, no less. Because nothing says stability like a man who teaches the past. He met Colleen at some bookstore in New Haven. Or maybe it was at a lecture. I don't remember. I only remember that someone in the prison library, some smug lifer who somehow got Time magazine, held it up one day and said, "Yo, Hartley. Your wife's in here again. Looking good, man." And there she was. Smiling. Hair curled just enough. That scar front and center. Her new boyfriend was in the photo with her. Daniel. Khakis. Glasses. Hand on her waist like he wasn't gripping gold. I stared at that picture so long, the ink smudged under my fingers. They looked happy. I didn't understand that. She was supposed to be hollowed out. Bitter. Untrusting. That's what trauma does, doesn't it? That's what I wanted it to do. But instead, she rebuilt. From the ground up. Her foundation kept growing. More branches. More funding. Celebrity endorsements. Victim advocacy panels. She started writing op-eds, publishing investigative pieces. Exposing people like me. And the press ate it up. The tattooed survivor turned journalist. They couldn't get enough. Meanwhile, I'd started getting death threats. From the inside. Turns out, people don't like men who torture pregnant women on video. Even in prison there's a food chain. I spent months in solitary, for my protection. That's when I wrote the letter. To Colleen. Just 6 words. You win. He looks like me. I don't know why I sent it. Some part of me still wanted to reach her. To shake her. To matter. She never replied. But 6 weeks later, Patricia moved. Took Grace. Left Vermont. Vanished. And then I got a visit. From someone I never expected. Her mother. Colleen's mother. Helen Westbrook. Or, as I would now learn, Helena Marchetti, daughter of a Boston crime boss with enough buried secrets to rewrite history. She walked into that visiting room like she still owned kingdoms. She sat down across from me, folded her hands, and said, "You've done enough. You won't hurt them again." I laughed in her face. She didn't flinch. "I know who you are," I said. "I know about the vault." She nodded. "And I know how to make men like you disappear." Her voice never rose. Her smile never wavered. But I believed her. Because sometimes, the scariest people don't need weapons. They just need to know where all the bodies are buried. They say everyone has a breaking point. I hit mine on a Tuesday. It was raining outside the cell block, like that mattered in a place where you're lucky to see sky through a slit in concrete. I was sitting on my bunk, replaying the last conversation with Helena Marchetti over and over, trying to decide whether she was bluffing or if the quiet threat in her eyes was real. That's when the guard slid open the door to the rec yard. And said, "Hartley. Mail." He tossed me a manila envelope. No return address. No name. Just one word on the flap, Oyer. The same word I'd made Valentina tattoo onto Colleen's forehead. The word that was supposed to define her. My throat tightened. My hands went cold. Inside was a single photograph. Colleen. Grace. And Daniel. They were in a park. Grace was on Daniel's shoulders, laughing. Colleen was holding an ice cream cone, her head thrown back in a way I hadn't seen since before the mask dropped. They looked like a family. There was a post-it note attached to the back. Written in that neat, looping script I hadn't seen since our college years. You were never the end of me. You were just the start. I don't remember punching the wall. I don't remember the blood pouring down my knuckles. I just remember the ache in my chest and the scream that wouldn't come out. Because somehow, against every plan I laid, she'd won. She'd taken the worst night of her life, the night I orchestrated, and used it to build a foundation that would outlive us both. Used it to tear down monsters like me. Used it to protect women like Patricia. Like Valentina should have been. She'd taken the word Oyer, and made it her brand. I found out later, through one of those contraband magazines, that she'd created a side initiative. Project Warrior. A campaign focused entirely on reclaiming narratives from survivors. Billboards. Murals. A podcast. A goddamn Netflix documentary. She didn't hide the scar. She used it like armor. Like a war medal. I used to fantasize about her waking up in a cold sweat, haunted by what I'd done. Now I realized. She probably woke up smiling. Because she knew something I didn't when I carved that word into her face. You don't own someone just because you break them. Especially not someone like Colleen Marie Hartley. They moved me to a new cell block last year. One of the older wings, colder, darker, fewer windows. Less chatter. More ghosts. I've had a lot of time to think here. About Colleen. About Valentina. About Christine, Patricia, even Helena Marchetti. About what I did. What I built. And what I destroyed. You want to know the last thing I ever heard about Colleen? She got married. To Daniel. Small ceremony. Private. No press. No statement. No designer gown or multi-tier cake. Just her, a man who didn't flinch at her truth, and a little girl named Grace tossing flower petals like her life was already written in sunlight. I got that photo, too. From Patricia, of all people. It came with a letter, just 2 sentences. I thought you should see the life you didn't get to ruin. Grace is thriving. Colleen is free. Goodbye, Gregory. And that was it. The final nail. Colleen never visited me. Never wrote. Never returned that first letter. She didn't need to. Her life, loud and visible and good, was her response. Her refusal to carry me one step further was the greatest punishment I could have received. And here's the part one didn't expect. I admire her. Not because I regret what I did. I don't. I'm not wired for regret. But because in a world full of victims, she became something else. Something dangerous. Unbreakable. She made me infamous, yes. But she also made herself immortal. Her story, our story, is taught in law classes now. There's a scholarship in Valentina's name. Project Warrior funds tattoo removal surgeries and trauma therapy for survivors all over the country. The Hartley Foundation just opened its 5th shelter. And me? I'll die here. My name will fade. My face will be forgotten. But hers? Will live longer than my sentence. Longer than my shame. And the irony? She didn't need revenge. She just needed to survive. Because survival, when done right, is revenge. I once tattooed a word on her face to brand her. She turned it into a weapon. She turned it into a name. She turned it into a legacy. So if you're reading this, whoever you are, remember the name. Colleen Marie Hartley. Not because she was my wife. But because she won. And I never saw her coming.